Hey all, welcome to week 3. I know you just had a lecture exam and you just had a lab practical, but unfortunately in this 8-week class, you just keep rolling. I wish you got a little downtime, but unfortunately that's just not the case. And I really want to make sure that you get going on this next lab section because basically we have 2 weeks, not even, right? Because you take the lab practical at the end of not this coming week, but the next week. So we have not even 2 weeks to teach you the entire skeleton, skull and all. So let me go ahead and get you rolling with what you need to do next week. So again, we're moving right on for lecture into exam 2. The nice part about this week's lectures, you've already had some introduction to them in the lab. So for example, you're going to do the integumentary system. So you've already had quite a bit of background in lab now on skin and the different layers. So I think you're going to find that this lecture is going to be really nice as you're going through it. And you might even have some of those aha moments since you got the lab before the lecture. So you're doing that for lecture. I'm just looking down here because you do have a lecture quiz on the 31st. So make sure you get that done. And then you're going to move into this lecture here, which is the bones and skeletal tissue. So when I say bones here, it's going to be more the kind of anatomy of bones, of long bones and short bones and the different types of bones in the body. It won't be the actual skeletal system where you're naming bones. So again, that will be the second set of lectures for this week. And you'll also find that I think you'll have a little bit of overlap here because you already did some of the histology of bone. And so you're going to get that again. And hopefully, again, you might have some of those nice aha moments. So that's going to be for the lecture. And that lecture quiz will be on February 3rd. So make sure that you take that again at the end. And it's got the dates in there, built in there for you. Okay, so let's go back now and talk really briefly about what you need to do for lab. And this is kind of where I wanted to spend most of my time because you probably have the kind of lecture routine down now. This lab practical is going to be a little different because the last lab practical was kind of all histology and I broke it down into sections. This lab practical is all the skeleton. So here it is, everything that you need to know for this next lab practical on one page. Okay. Now, don't let that give you a false sense of security because there is a lot with the skeletal system. So one of the things I suggest that you would do first would be you can either download or print even this page here. It's going to give you all of the structures that you're responsible for in the skeletal system. So again, you're going to have to be responsible for the majority of the bones, not all 206, but many of the bones, and then certain special features on each bone. And that's why you're going to want to have this list. So one of the first things I suggest you do is go ahead and download or print that list. The next thing you can do here is, again, download, or if I'm a person that likes to have a hard copy, I would probably print this even though it's 28 pages. Because this is going to go over each bone and the features or structures, special features and structures that you need to know for each bone. So I would go ahead and make sure that you download that or have a copy of that easily accessible, because this is going to be where you're going to start, where you're going to introduce yourself to the bones that you need to know and these structures. Okay. So let me go back here. You're going to see there's one for the axial skeleton, and then there's going to be one for the appendicular skeleton. So we go over this, but the axial skeleton is going to be kind of the bones of the trunk of the body, and then the appendicular, it's easier to kind of know what the appendicular skeleton is, and then everything else is the axial. So the appendicular skeleton is going to be your limbs, upper and lower limbs, and then the bones that actually attach those limbs to the body. So what we call the pectoral girdle and then the pelvic girdle. Okay, that's the appendicular skeleton. So everything else is going to be axial. So there is a guide here, again, This is basically your lab book. These two sets of guides for the axial skeleton and the appendicular skeleton here, where everything is labeled, is basically your lab book introducing you to each of these bones and the special features that you need to know on these bones. Okay, so those are really important guides to have. Sorry, I keep hopping out of a lab practical 2 here. But so you can see that's really where you want to start, okay, with introducing yourself. You can also find more images on this BIO201 resource page. You can just scroll down and you'll see there are more images of the bones if you'd like to have some that are, unlabeled, or if you want to have more that are labeled that you'd like to test yourself on. And I'll actually show you, I end up creating some study tools with these here for you. So I'll show you that in just a minute. Lastly, I have some videos. So again, what I would suggest you do first for this to introduce yourself is open up. This week, we're going to be doing the skull and the axial skeleton, and then you'll be doing only the upper limb for the appendicular skeleton, okay? So where I would start first is, again, take this guide, print it or open it up and save it on your computer, whatever style you have that you are already, doing and works for you. Do that, and then if you can open it up and then side by side, look through that as you watch my axial skeleton video. The reason I highly suggest that you watch this axial skeleton video, even though I know it's a little lengthy, and I apologize that there are advertisements because it is on YouTube. Hopefully, you can kind of quickly skip it there. But you can see, I have this whole video. Sorry, I don't know why it starts on minute 8, so just go back to the beginning and pull it back to the beginning. But you'll see on that video, I am going to introduce you on how to pronounce the terms. And I think that is very important for your understanding of the anatomy of the skeletal system. And I can actually say this from experience because I took an anatomy course, one of my first anatomy courses that I took as an undergrad up at NAU. And unfortunately, that semester, I had an instructor that was doing kind of an experiment. And they thought that it would be a good idea to have us students basically put together presentations, one lab, and then the next lab, we would present a certain portion of the body. Maybe it was, a certain portion of the skull or the upper limb. We would present that to each other, and then we could go study after that. The challenge was that we didn't know how to pronounce any of the terms, and so we weren't comfortable saying them. And I found as a student that it was really hard for me to learn these terms without knowing how to pronounce them. So over the years, I finally kind of put together these 2 videos for you, and I go through how to pronounce all of the bones and all of the features of the bones. So again, that's where I would start. It is well worth your time initially, because if you can pronounce those bones, you're much more likely to remember them, okay? And again, I can say this from experience. They actually scrapped that method and went back to the traditional method after that semester because so many of the students did so poorly. And I actually ended up retaking anatomy because I felt like I really didn't learn it very well. And I was very frustrated as a student. So I had that experience, thankfully, in a good way, because it made me realize how important it is for you guys to hear how these terms are pronounced. So yeah, so please start there, watch the axial skeleton video and go alongside it with the axial skeleton lab guide. And then you can go ahead and do the upper limb. You can kind of, I think I start with the upper limb on the appendicular skeleton. So you can do the upper limb for the second half of the week. And again, use that appendicular skeleton guide, okay, to kind of walk yourself through it with the video. So that's kind of where you start. Then from here, we're going to start to get into studying, right? Some of that repetition study tools. So you can see, you can link to some of these files here. I have, what I ended up doing is creating a PowerPoint of some of these images for you. So that way then you can go through and test yourself. So I did do some, because I know some people like to have something printed that they can test themselves. So what I did was I did all the leader lined images here. So that way then you can go through and use this as a study tool to test yourself. I will tell you, make sure that when you watch that axial skeleton video, pay attention to the vertebra, because they are challenging. And I give you some good tips there that I would give you if you were in the in-person lab. Okay. So these are some study tools. There's one for the axial skeleton, one for the appendicular skeleton. Here, and then you can, if you're testing yourself, please remember that the answers to a lot of these leader line images are back on this page right here, images on this page. So you'll see I actually took these images, the leader line images from here. And so if you're testing yourself and you want to check to see how you did, come here, come back to this page, and you can check yourself on the answers for each of these. Okay, so hopefully that will be a good study tool. So again, you know, as you're going through these images here, just go back up and check yourself here. Okay, and then the joints will be, I'll talk about the joints for the following week, because that'll be week 4. This is just a document that lists kind of the bony markings to help you identify bones from the left and the right. So there's a couple of like features. This will be kind of, you know, really more for the appendicular skeleton. So save that kind of for next week. Study resources. So as you're really starting to get into some of your study resources, you can use these web albums. Again, I kind of already showed you quite most of the web albums. This one's kind of one that's just focused here, I think, on axial. So that is a kind of honed in web album. So you can use those. And then there are some specific tutorial videos with another instructor. So if you feel like you're needing a little bit more, you can go over these. It's up to you. Again, I put these resources. You don't have to use all of them. Pick and choose what's going to work best for you. But if you're really struggling with the vertebra, it'd be a good idea. This is Dr. Harrison put these together, and these are some actually really good detailed videos. So you can go through some of those videos if you're needing a little help, extra help. Then another study tool, and this one's very helpful if you don't have an actual model. So when I took anatomy, and hold on here for just a moment, I'm actually going to show you kind of what I used when I was first learning anatomy. So if you don't have, you know, your own models at home, so there are some nice skull models out there that are anatomically correct in terms of they are castings for anatomy. You can find some used skulls out there on the internet from previous nursing students, or you can also just check out our bone box in the library. So if you've got a chance on a weekend and you can drive down to the Red Mountain campus, unfortunately it's only at the Red Mountain campus, but you can call the library ahead of time, reserve the bone box, and then you can actually reserve a room, take the bone box, bring it into that room, and go through, you know, you can even take your own pictures and things like that. Or if you have some of these, you know, anatomical models, these are really helpful. If you know of someone that has some that you can borrow, or if you are, again, you know, working at a hospital and they have something you can borrow, even again, if it's just the skull is really helpful if you have this in hand. Now, if you don't have any of those options, your next best option for like a 3D manipulative model would be these Sketchfab models created by Dr. Churosky, which is going to be your 202 instructor next semester. So kind of cool. He actually took quite a bit of time and put together these great Sketchfab 3D models that you can actually manipulate and move. They are amazing, and I highly suggest if you don't have your own 3D model, hop in here and use these. So it's cool. You can take, so check this out. Look at that. You can take your cursor. You're just going to click and then you can rotate any direction you want to look inside the skull here on the anterior end. You want to flip it around, look at the posterior end. You want to look on the inferior side. They're pretty amazing. So please use those tools, especially if you don't have your own 3D models. They are really extremely helpful for being able to manipulate that model. And that active learning, again, is really what you want to be doing. The more active you are in that learning, the more likely it is to stick. So lastly, I know, sorry, I don't want to be too long. Lastly, here are these practice techniques. So you can get the repetition, repetition, repetition. So the soft chalk labeling activities, you're probably very familiar with those now. And then the StudyMate flashcards, also very helpful. The last thing that some students like, again, this doesn't work for everybody. This is a labeling activity or labeling exercise. So you can print some of these pages and then test yourself on these. I've even had students that have printed them and then they actually put like one of those plastic covers over it. So that way then they could, the clear plastic covers. So you could write in there with a marker and then just an erasable marker, and then you can like a dry erase marker, and then they could clear it off and test themselves over and over again. So that's another idea if you happen to like that technique. And this also helps you with just like practicing writing some of the terms as well. So that is another option for you as well. And again, just keep in mind, you have to kind of pick which methods are going to work best for you and your learning style. And that's why we provide all of these. There is a bone box here. It is interesting and it's a fun way to test yourself, but this is just kind of if you have time in this 8-week course. I know things are rapid. So again, these are kind of some extras. Same with the Wiley Student Companion site. These are kind of some extra things here. And then, so with the bone labeling exercise, I have answer keys. So here, if you're going to test yourself. So this is, if you're going to use an extra study tool, this is the one I would suggest. Honestly, you can use these, but I know that you guys are strapped for time. So this would be the one that I would say would be most useful to you. Okay. And that's the one we actually hand out that labeling exercise in lab for the in-person labs. Lastly, I do have some review session videos here for you at the very end when you're wanting to wrap it up and you just want to see kind of how comfortable you feel with that. And then, lastly, sorry, I have the practice quizzes. So you can take these practice quizzes. As a reminder, the practice quizzes do not count for a grade. They are just to help give you an idea of the types of questions that I would ask on the practical before you actually take the practice practical. Okay. So, and you can take those practice quizzes at any time. I have due dates to help keep you on track, but they're not really, hard due dates. You can take it early, you can take it late, whenever works best for you. Okay. All right. So that's it for this week. Sorry, I didn't mean to make that video so long, but I wanted to make sure that you started off on the right track with the skeletal system in the lab because it's going to be so fast and furious. And if you need help moving through and going through some of this anatomy and it's just too cumbersome, please set up some time with me. I am more than happy to set up a Google Meet or a Zoom or WebEx, whatever works best for you. All right, everybody, take care and enjoy your week 3.